Welcome to the weekly Health RX by Arvasi. I'm Dr. Avanti Kumar Singh.
And I'm Dr. Tanmeet Sethi. We're physicians trained in modern medicine and experts in Ayurveda. And each Sunday, we cut through the noise with physician-led, science-backed prescriptions personalized to your biology.
From your hormones and gut to your circadian rhythm and nervous system, we'll help you take care of the systems that matter most so you can stop guessing and start feeling better. Finally, medicine that fits you.
All right, Thanksgiving is next week. And if you're like me, you're already strategizing either about cooking or travel logistics and how to get through this huge feast. But that's because also what's already happening is your digestion has changed because of this fall season we're in. And now, one plate of rich food and you're more bloated than maybe you would have been before, or maybe your stomach is more distended. And so you're caught between wanting to have a big feast and a lot of fun, but then trying to figure out how to eat and not spend the weekend feeling miserable. And what I want you to hear is this is not about willpower or discipline. Your gut has changed. It's changed in this fall season. Your hormones are shifting, and that's changing how your gut functions, from your microbiome to how you handle blood sugar to how quickly food moves through your system. So let's talk about, Avanti, what's actually happening physiologically.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me explain what's happening hormonally, which is what you already mentioned, because this is really key to understanding why your gut might be acting different now, especially as we, perimenopausal and menopausal women enter this phase of life. Our gut microbiome is actually quite different. Estrogen isn't just about reproduction. It's actually protective for your digestive system. Estrogen maintains your gut lining, and it also regulates gut motility, which is the movement of anything that goes through your GI tract. It also helps to reduce inflammation, and it also supports your microbiome. So when estrogen starts to decline in perimenopause and menopause, all of those functions start to also decrease, and the protection that you once had also decreases. Research that was published in Gut Microbes found that postmenopausal women have very different gut microbiomes compared to premenopausal women, with less diversity and more inflammatory bacteria, which means you're going to have more inflammation then, right? If it gets unbalanced. And here's what's even more critical. As your estrogen goes down, it also affects your insulin sensitivity and your glucose metabolism. Studies show that postmenopausal women have a 30 to 40% decrease in insulin sensitivity compared to premenopausal women, which means that your body just doesn't handle blood sugar as efficiently anymore, especially after meals, especially after large carbohydrate-rich holiday meals, and your blood sugar will spike higher and it'll stay elevated longer, which all contributes to why you kind of feel really crummy after these big, Thanksgiving feasts or other holiday meals. And so, the other thing that happens is that when your blood sugar stays elevated, your body then will store that extra energy, that sugar, as fat. It also creates more inflammation, and then it disrupts your gut microbiome even more. And so it's this cascade effect that happens. I don't know about you, Tanmeet, but I definitely feel this. I'm Pitta Kapha, and, I definitely feel this after a big holiday meal. If I don't really manage sort of what I'm eating and sort of what I'm doing even before the meal, but then also what I'm doing after the meal, I wake up so puffy and so inflamed the next day. It's really immediate, and it just makes me feel crummy. And I'm also anticipating how I'll feel. So I'm totally that person you were just talking about of anticipating the meals, the holiday fun, the family, events, but then also all of the discomfort I'll feel if I partake in that, meal, but then I don't want it. It's a hard thing. I feel like that's me.
Well, I don't think you're alone. I feel it too. But there is good news, because what you're saying is really important. If people really heard you, you're saying that you have to prepare yourself to really manage this meal. Because the good news is you don't need to avoid feasting or being
Right.
restrictive because it's a time to have joy and feasting with family and friends. But what you do need is a strategy to prepare your digestive system before you eat and then support it afterwards. So, think of it like priming a pump. When you prepare your gut with the right signals, it can handle holiday meals without that bloating and discomfort. And so let's talk about this two-part strategy. There's two critical windows, right? So there's before you eat and after you eat. And before you eat, we want to be activating our digestive enzymes, stimulating our gut microbiome, preparing our system to process food. And then after we eat, we want to support that digestive process, help with things moving along, and signaling your gut to complete digestion more efficiently.
Yeah, I think that's so important, the Meath, is that, really thinking about what you're going to do right before and after a meal can really, really change how you experience that meal. And, there is science behind this as to why this works, right? So let's talk about each part separately. The before, which is the microbiome connection. And that's the prep work. That's what you're going to do before meals, right? Your gut microbiome actually responds to signals. And research shows that digestive stimulants like specific spices and herbal teas can actually help to change the composition and the activity of your gut bacteria in real time. So when you prep your gut before you eat, you're essentially waking up your digestive system and saying, get ready. You're really preparing the microbiome to receive that food. Now, the second part of that is what you do after the meal, okay? And that's the glucose connection. That's that post-meal support. This is where the magic happens with blood sugar. When you use your muscles after you eat a large meal, your muscles take up that glucose from your bloodstream without requiring as much insulin. This is called insulin-independent glucose uptake. Studies in diabetic patients show that just 10 to 15 minutes of post-meal walking, just walking, can reduce blood sugar spikes by up to 30%. Because what's happening here is your muscles are acting like a metabolic sponge. So they pull that glucose out of your blood and use it for energy instead of storing it for fat. And it also helps to regulate your energy, your glucose spikes, so that you feel sort of more steady. Now, why does this really matter for all of us? It really matters because it makes us feel better after we eat these meals. It really matters for women in perimenopause and menopause because you're preventing that sort of roller coaster of blood sugar that you'll go on. You're reducing inflammation. You're supporting your microbiome. And again, you're helping your body just process these meals more efficiently. So really, you're really helping your body adjust to, even though your estrogen is declining, like we talked about, and you lose a lot of those protective functions, you're actually helping to sort of mitigate that a little bit, which I think is super important. And it's something that's so simple to do. And so, okay, so I've talked a lot about the science. Now, Denise, can you tell us exactly, like, how do we do this and what should we be doing?
Yeah, let's get to some strategy, because if we can really talk about two simple universal practices that anyone can use, regardless of your constitution or dosha. And if you've already taken the dosha data assessment at mayurvasi.com, don't worry, we're going to get to your personalized dosha prescription right after this. But in terms of what we all can do, let's go over two simple practices. The first one would be that before meal prep, what we do to awaken our gut and stimulate our enzymes. So this one would be CCFT. And what that means is C, cumin, C, coriander, F, fennel, cumin, coriander, fennel tea. And it's a traditional Ayurvedic digestive tea that's been used for thousands of years for good reason. It's really quite simple. So it's equal parts cumin, coriander, and fennel seeds. So 1 teaspoon of cumin seeds, 1 teaspoon of coriander seeds, 1 teaspoon of fennel seeds, and you steep those in hot water for 5 to 10 minutes. That's it. It's so simple. But these 3 seeds are actually tridoshic, meaning they balance all constitutional types. They're not too heating, they're not too cooling, they're just right. And the way that they work really improves that digestive enzyme secretion, reduces inflammation, and supports beneficial gut bacteria. So the cumin stimulates the digestive enzymes, coriander's cooling and anti-inflammatory, and the fennel prevents gas and bloating, and all within about 30 minutes of drinking it. So if you drink it first thing in the morning upon waking, before you do anything else, it primes your digestive system for the day. It's like sending that signal to your gut that we're ready. And, what you can do to make this much easier is just keep a jar of that equal parts mix of, a lot of it on your kitchen counter. And then you just take a teaspoon of it and you've got, your mix. But you can do it however works for you. But making a big batch kind of takes out the inertia of decision making of doing it over and over.
Yeah. And I mean, I definitely do that. I have a jar of it on my counter right next to the stove. So it's just like super simple to do. And, it's interesting because I think at first, you either love it or some people just have to get used to it. I love it. We've been drinking it ever since we were children, but it really helps to soothe your digestion. And I think it just becomes sort of this really nice way to start the morning also. You also know that you're doing something good for your digestion. So it's a great habit to have any time of the year, but especially during the holidays, right? So yeah. I love it. I don't know how you feel about it, Tamit.
I do. And I love the taste, but that's just me. But, even if you don't love it right away, it does become quite soothing. I agree. It's not at all hard to drink. And then the second practice, will be more about supporting your gut after meals. And so what that is also very simple. None of these are complicated. They just need to get into habits, right? But the second practice is after you finish eating, whether it's that huge Thanksgiving dinner or just your breakfast, if you can take a 10-minute walk, then like Avanti said, the research really supports that kind of gentle, steady walk can just really help that your muscles get that glucose picked up, right? Without having to secrete more insulin to do it. On top of that, movement after eating also supports your gut and motility, and your food just moves through more efficiently. So, you have two things going on here. You have support of your digestive process, and then you have support of your insulin process, of your glucose transport and metabolism. And both of those together really can help you reduce that bloating and improve digestion. And we talked about the research before. Avanti mentioned why this is so important, but this isn't new. It's not that modern science just figured it out, but actually it's an ancient Ayurvedic principle. It's a principle called Shatapavali, which means taking 100 steps after eating. It wasn't just tradition, it was metabolic wisdom. And now the research proves why this works. I love when modern science catches up with what we already knew. And, in many cultures, this is part of just life. In Italy, for instance, there's a practice called passeggiata where everyone takes an evening walk into the square after meals. And, this isn't a new kind of idea. It's actually something that cultures knew and adopted over and over, and then we forgot.
Yeah. I think it's really important too, because I think it's not only about, taking the walk, but I think it's also about connection, right? Mm-hmm. After a meal, you walk with, whoever you were having a meal with, your family, your partner, your children, your friends. It's just a way to connect with each other too. So there's so much wisdom in these practices that go beyond sort of the medicine and physiology. And it's really medicine in a different way because of the connection. So I think that's important to think about also.
Yeah, it might be the most important part of the medicine, to be honest.
Exactly.
But these two practices, so the morning CCFT and the post-meal walks, and remember, whenever you can, you don't need to be stringent about this and say, oh my gosh, I've got to do this every time. You just want to do it as often as you can so that it becomes part of your lifestyle, part of your routine to move your body. Because think about what the opposite is. The opposite is falling on the couch and watching TV or, which is also okay sometimes. But when that becomes our norm, then we fall into this pattern where we're not helping and supporting our digestive process. So you're really going to notice a significant difference in how you feel through the holidays if you can start to make this part of your practice.
Yeah. And the reason that we're talking about it a week before Thanksgiving, so, it's almost 2 weeks in advance, is because we want you to actually try these practices out now. Start making them part of your day, the CCFT in the morning, and then these post-meal walks, and just start practicing it, because then by the time that you get to Thanksgiving next week, you're already doing this and you're starting to feel the effects. And hopefully you'll take both these practices beyond the holidays because they're going to make you feel good. So that's really why we wanted to talk about this week.
Yeah, exactly. And then next week, we're going to talk about something that's also important for the holidays, which is nervous system regulation. How to stay steady when you feel yourself getting activated from just the stress of travel, of family dynamics, and just that holiday stress of expectation that's pulling you every direction. I promise you, from November till January, this is mostly what I talk about with patients in my practice. So we'll talk about that next week. And right now, though, we'll talk about what this all means in terms of your gut for you and your individual dosha.
Thanks for listening to the Weekly Health RX by Arvasi. Be sure to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen so you never miss your weekly prescription.
And make sure to take the Arvasi Dosha Data Assessment at myarvasi.com, linked in the show notes, so you can unlock your biology and get your own personalized weekly prescription.